Welcome to the HiFLEX Health and Performance Podcast, where I'm your host, Dr. Chelsea Smith. We'll be talking about all things physical therapy, where we believe an almighty God created us to move and to be able to heal. Join us as we talk through whole body health, pain relief, post-surgical rehab, life lessons we've learned, things we repeatedly tell our patients, and the list goes on. All right, welcome to episode 2. And today I have Dr. Sarah Peterson with me.
Hello.
Okay, so basically just give us a little background about you, just like a snippet. How long you've been with HiFLEX, which is what, like a year and a half now almost?
It has been.
Okay, I'll let Sarah introduce herself and then we'll get chatting.
Well, I'm Sarah Peterson. A year and a half ago, I joined the HiFLEX team in Chattanooga. I've been a PT for 9 years.
Crazy.
I know, very.
About to say a decade.
I did some travel physical therapy for a while and have kind of moved around. So I feel like I've seen a lot of different clinics and lots of different ways to do things and different ways of practicing as far as, how the clinic itself is run, how many patients are seen at a time, how much one-on-one time you get with your person, with your PT or PTA. Really just kind of runs the gamut. So I've seen a lot. I've learned a lot through that and have pretty strong feelings after experiencing a lot of different types of that. I'm also a mom and another mom to be. Yay! So got a 2-year-old, 2.5, and one on the way. So that's exciting. Just excited to be here.
Heck yeah. Okay, so in your experience of having all sorts of different settings that you've worked in, I'm assuming, because I have a bias, that this is the preferred style. And I know you and Nick have also, Nick is her husband, done a similar style of PT. So when I was looking to hire Sarah, I was like, oh, you get it. Like, this is the world that you're in, and this is the world that you like to be in. And so we just kind of wanted to talk today about why we both like this and what that really means working in this style and what even is that if you're new to the podcast. So HiFLEX is a concierge styled private pay outpatient physical therapy practice that we do run insurance for out of network things. But basically the whole goal is to not be handcuffed by an insurance system or time constraints or anything like that. And so we're going to touch on a few of these topics today and just kind of give you some of our perspective and why we love it so much. So let's kind of dive into, she had written a blog post recently and we're going to kind of use that as a framework. So quality and depth of care are kind of the first things that you talked about.
Yeah.
So unpack that a little. What do you like about the amount of quality you're able to give in this setting?
This is so easy. I could go on forever. I, of course, won't. But when you have worked in a place or been a patient in a physical therapy clinic, it's evident from I'll say day 2, because almost every physical therapy clinic will give you a one-on-one with the physical therapist for the whole evaluation.
Yeah.
Most places that's maybe 45 minutes to an hour, which is good. And then most places, I'm gonna guess at least like 90% of places across the US now, probably, are after that first visit, then you're either sharing time with another patient, with your physical therapist. So your PT is seeing 2 or sometimes more than that, sometimes 3, sometimes more. Kind of just goes up from there, really. But on average, 2 to 3 patients at a time. So your time is split with other people. And so you're only getting that one-on-one time, maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And even that quote unquote one-on-one time is still kind of divided because they're still pointing at the other person and telling them what to do. The thing with that is, I'm just gonna be honest, the PTs don't like it. It's not like PTs choose this, like it's not like the other PTs out there are like, oh yes, please give me 2 to 3 patients at a time. That's just how the corporate business is run, and they are forced to see that many at a time. Mm-hmm. So while it's not their fault, and I'm sure they wouldn't prefer it that way.
Nope.
It's just stuck in the insurance world that we live in currently.
And for most people that are a patient, I don't even necessarily know if it's like, I'm sure they know that because they're so used to going to their physician and they get 3 to 7 minutes with their physician. Yeah. So it's like, oh, well, this is at least an hour, which is true. But if they've not experienced the other side or on the other side where they don't think they mind it, which is great. I mean, there's plenty of people when I was in Benchmark World and it was their social hour. They enjoyed seeing
Yeah.
a slew of people. This typically ends up being like the older population. But I don't think they realize that it's due to insurance reimbursement. Like
Right.
in order to stay profitable as a business, you have to see that many people. Otherwise, if you're getting reimbursed lower than the cost it is to run your business, it obviously is going to sink at some point. And so, they have a little more flexibility in the big clinics to where it's like if their schedules are slower and you get one person an hour, it's great. But ultimately, in my experience, when we had one person an hour repeatedly all day, someone was going to come in barking at you of like, why is your volume down? Like, why are you not seeing more people and what's going on? And
Yeah.
then it's just crazy. And so if you're at the beginning part of the day and maybe your therapist is caffeinated and ready to go versus it's, 5 o'clock and they have kids and now they're thinking about what they've got to do to make dinner and pick their kids up, and you're the end of the day and you're still one of 3 people, you just might not get the same
That's a
amount
good
of
point too.
care that you do in the morning. Who knows?
Yeah. There's only so much brain power in any person.
Right.
for one
Exactly.
day.
Exactly. And I even know now in this setting, trying to map out sessions in my brain ahead of time, um, it's just a different ballgame when you're mapping it out for 3 people. And I just like couldn't. So I would just go based on like, what did we do last time? I'm just going to change the progression of resistance bands, and I'm going to just check off the list while they're doing it and then move on. So yeah, the
Yeah.
quality is totally different. And
I
this is
think
why we like it.
yes, like it really is so different. Like you can pick up on so many more, like so much more when you're really focused on the one person compared to if you're splitting your time, or maybe you have a tech or someone else who's helping out with the exercises with somebody. Their eyes are on that person, not yours, and you're missing a lot when that
Mhm.
happens. Like you might be missing some compensation that leads you down a different train of thought of
Right.
what might be some underlying causes. But um, on top of all that, I think one of the we didn't last very long. I would say we, because like Chelsea said, my husband's also a physical therapist. We did all this together. Um, we did not last very long in the insurance, I'll say typical clinic world, outpatient PT world, of the multiple patients at a time. And we, in our travel career, began to just totally exclude any of those jobs because we both felt when we would come home at the end of the day, not only stressed out, really tired, um, but you just kind of have to, you just wonder if you feel bad. You feel bad because you
Right.
feel like you couldn't give your best to every person.
Yeah.
You feel like you are not doing your job good enough, and so it just you carry it home with you. You just can't leave it at work.
It's an energy suck for
It
sure.
is.
For
And
sure.
then you feel like you're not making as much of a difference for a person as you could if you were
Yeah.
one-on-one. So all that to say, we quickly went to choosing only jobs that would be one-on-one in our travel career, which are very few and far between. But
Yeah. And you have a
then,
totally different view of that because I was only in one world and you've seen multiple different settings with traveling.
yeah, and which I mean just opens your eyes really. And granted, the only places that we were able to find that were one-on-one were not they were like associated with a hospital who's making money from elsewhere,
Yeah.
so they don't have to make as much money from the PT department. But
That makes sense.
and so then that led us to wanting to do what you're doing. We opened our own clinic for a couple of years, and same for all these reasons. Plus, I'm sure more what we'll talk about. But and then after that, just wanted to move closer to family, and that's what brought us back here and led me to HiFLEX.
And I've been blessed by it. I'm like, yes, I'm so glad you have family here because it was a perfect solution to what I needed. I needed another unicorn person who loves this and has flexibility to just the ebbs and flow of private practice. So for those listening that are like, oh, well, all I've ever had is this other experience, and we're definitely not here to say you can't get good outcomes there, because you can improve, and based on our belief that the body is intended to heal anyways, we know that even if you didn't go to therapy, oftentimes you're going to improve. Like it's just that you can
Right.
improve so much faster, and you can feel so much more empowered if you know what's going on. So that'll kind of take us to another level of this conversation on being able to uncover the root of the issue. And it's that oftentimes there's things driving pain and there's things driving just whatever scenario you may find yourself in with limitations in movement or ability to do daily tasks or whatever it is, whether it's, a sport or I can't reach in my cupboard over my head or I can't pick my kid up. There's usually a lot going on that led to that. way before your pain started. And we know, like I was just saying, you're going to get better typically, but if you can have somebody have the time to at least get to the root, it's so much more efficient. And then you have so many more tools in your toolbox to know what to do when it happens in the future, if it comes back. So let's chat a little bit about that, on why you've enjoyed, or just what you feel like you have more time to do. And then you can take that whatever route you want to take that, whether you want to talk about treatment style or if you want to talk about, however you want to take that conversation. What does it mean to you to figure out the root?
Yeah. Having the time and 100% attention, I think, is the biggest thing, and not like being able to not have my attention split between two people or whatever. So being able to try different movement patterns and maybe different exercises, or whether it's me hands-on, press on different parts of the body, just to see, try to narrow down further where the issue is really stemming from. I think that some of that goes back to what I was saying a minute ago of if the clinic is just too busy, if the PT is just too busy and it's not fully one-on-one, then things just get missed more often. And like you said, like it's not missed forever, because every PT I know is a pretty good PT.
Right.
Like, like PTs are good in general, good people. Like we try to do our best. So it's not that it's going to be missed forever, but it might be missed for that day and maybe not really checked in further until like the next day or the next week or something. And so I think that's where some of that kind of efficiency comes in, is because you're getting kind of more bang for your buck, more bang for your hour of therapy. You're seeing all the things at once and being able to address more in one session, or maybe not necessarily even addressing more, but addressing the one problem more in depth.
Right.
Or just better quality, or whatever the case may be. Instead of it taking a couple of visits to really get to that root, you get to that root issue much quicker.
Totally agree. And I know Sarah is similar to me in the fact that we like to have conversation with our patients. And so there's sometimes, I mean, tell me if it is not the same for you, but there's times where, I mean, it's probably 30 to 40 minutes that I'm just chatting with the person, trying to figure out a little bit more of the backstory of what's going on, especially in an evaluation, obviously. But there's even follow-up days where it's like, you can just tell this is very stress oriented and very, like, maybe there's some trauma behind something, and you just need to be able to have a conversation that goes in depth enough and long enough that you can listen. Because typically, I mean, they tell us in PT school, like most of the time, a good subjective is going to tell you what's wrong with the patient. But if you don't have time to have a really good subjective, or if maybe they don't trust you quite enough because they have different therapists every time they're into a clinic, maybe they're not going to divulge some of that information to you.
That's a good point too.
And so I have a few patients where in my mind, I'm like, gosh, am I not time managing well enough? Like, I haven't done anything with this person. It's been 30 minutes. But then at the end of a session, they'll thank me of like, I just really needed to talk that out, I think. And so to them, it's valuable being able to just have somebody listen to their story. And so I think that's been cool in this world too, is it's not that we necessarily are doing every single treatment possible because we have a full hour. Sometimes it's that we can hone in, like she's saying, on one certain part of this and just be more thorough in that, whether it's figuring out the background of that person, or maybe, maybe you just need 30 minutes of just someone touching your body with some kind of a joint mob or something. But it's just totally different because, like she was saying earlier, it typically was about 20 minutes, maybe less, that I was able to actually touch my patients in the clinic. And there's a whole side tangent conversation that plenty of PTs have of like, well, do you need to touch someone, or is it just exercise or whatever? But I feel like everybody on the HiFLEX team, we're very manual based for a lot of reasons. And then we progress through exercise, but we value touching the patient and having time to actually figure out what's going on.
Yeah, agreed. And how many times have you been told from a patient that even just like, thank you for listening, and like letting them tell their full story, not interrupting?
Yes. 100%.
Or, like you said, you go, again, not by any fault of their own. It's just insurance-based stuff. But you go to the doctor's office, and I can't remember the stat now, but it's something crazy of how quickly people get interrupted.
I think it's within the first 3.5 minutes.
That's what I was going to say, was 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And so if you can't get your whole spiel out in 3 minutes, then you're probably not, like, they're probably not going to hear it.
Right. Because you can't bill for conversation.
Right.
You can't just be like 15 minutes. And people that don't know how billing usually works in insurance world, it's typically by like a 15-minute chunk. So if you're not even getting 15 minutes with your physician anyways, you're definitely not going to get that out. And they have to bill for something. And so they can't bill for conversation. I mean, you can bill for education, technically speaking. But yeah, it's just a different world. So the way that we bill, just to throw it in as a side tangent, if you're new here, is it's just a fee for a service. So you're coming in to see us for an evaluation. It has one price point. Generally, it's 200. And if you're coming in for a follow up, if you're coming into the office, it's 175. And then, we obviously have packages and things like that. But there is not this pressure of, okay, we're low on units, so I need to make sure I, squeeze in these other things so I can bill for something. There is no pressure of what we need to do in a session because we're not guided by reimbursement rates.
Yeah, the person gets what they actually need every session.
Yes.
Tailored and personalized every time.
Yes. I mean, I can remember in a place that I worked previously, we would have a whole company-wide meeting on, okay, now insurance is reimbursing less on these certain codes. So not to say to be unethical because you need to actually do what you're doing, but if you can possibly make it a combo that's, 2 units of manual and then make sure you're getting a unit of neuro and then make sure you're getting a unit of this because those reimburse better. They almost had to coach you on how your clinic could have more profitability based on units, which I get. I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand on a business side, you have to make money. But it's just unfortunate that it's all dictated by like, well, insurance is lower on this unit. So make sure you're getting all the Therex because that reimburses the most. And it's like, well, that's great. But also
Yeah.
like, what if I don't think they need that day? And you don't get that here. I mean, we have certain out of network billing things that are frustrating to see because I would like someone to be able to utilize their out of network benefits more successfully. And if their insurance plan comes back and says, well, we're going to give you $20 for this unit, this particular unit, that might be a frustration because their side is going to be higher than if they had a good, insurance plan coming through. But ultimately, you're never going to pay more than our cash rate, which is what I tell everyone. It's like, here's the grand total you're going to pay. If they help you zero, this is our cash rate. If they come in and help you out, fantastic. It's a discount off your cash rate. But I never dictate a session based on what I think their out of network plan is going to do.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a benefit or nothing. Yeah.
Yep. What's going to get them better the fastest.
Exactly. And I would say most people that see us are of the understanding that they're going to probably pay the full cash rate. There's a few people we've seen here and there where it's like, oh, I really need my insurance to help me. And it might make a difference on how many sessions they see us for. But that takes us to another point of faster recovery with fewer visits, in that depending on the business model, you may have a goal of a certain amount of visits. Like I think the average across outpatient, the last time I looked, was between 12 and 16 or something like that, which is great. And if you have somebody that wants to stay with you as long as possible to get all of the maximized benefits, have a longer outcome as far as carryover and being able to educate and learn and fully strengthen, because that just takes time, that's great. But also we have people where they value that we're not trying to do that. So I've seen several people for 4 visits or 6 visits or something like that. So what's been your experience in this setting as far as fewer visits?
Yeah. I would say most often I see people once a week, sometimes twice a week. I'd say that's more so if it's somebody who's post-op or depending on the situation, like they've only got a couple of weeks until this big event, whether that's a race or whatever, and they need more in a shorter amount of time, then it might be more like 2 times a week or something. But I would say most of the time I see people once a week. Yeah, maybe 6 visits on average, but once a week, that's carried out for a month and a half, which in the traditional PT world would be, like 12 to 16 visits. That's a lot. So depending on what your copay is, if you're copaying 12 to 16 visits versus cash paying 6 visits, it may not be very much different, if any.
Totally agree.
But yeah, and so with the once a week visits, with our patients, we put a lot of the control in our patients' hands. I'll say a lot of the responsibility in our patients' hands, as far as we want to empower you to know know what's going on in your body, what you can do to help get it better, and just have a full understanding. This kind of goes back to what we were just saying, is like we have the time to talk to you. We have the time to fully
Yes.
educate on what's going on. And that's something I hear a lot more in this versus standard insurance world too, is people will more often say like, thank you for taking the time to explain this. Like nobody's ever explained it to me this way, or I've never heard it said this way, or, like they just told me it was rotator cuff tear, but I didn't know what that meant, and so
Yeah.
you like take the time to explain it, and then it just makes more sense to the person. It helps them to realize why we're doing what we're doing. And we explain that along the way too. Like,
Yeah.
we're strengthening this because of this, and we're gonna try to stretch this out because its range of motion isn't good, or whatever. But anyway, so side tangent.
Love it. This is what it's here for. This is why podcasts are so fun, because it just turns into conversation and it's like, yes, I have so much I can talk about all these topics.
But yeah, with our patients being a little bit more in control and knowledgeable or responsible for their own care, once a week I think works out really well for a lot of different pains or whatever treatment you're coming in for. But because we give a thorough home exercise program, we tell you the most important things to work on. We have an app that keeps you accountable to whatever degree of accountability you want to need,
Yes.
whether that's like minimal or like we can track you every day if you need us to. But
Yes.
and then that puts more power in their hands too, and then allows us in the clinic time in our 1 hour a week to focus on maybe the hands-on stuff or dry needling or whatever it is that they need, and then be able to progress through some homework exercises to be able to have them work on at home, to where we're not necessarily, holding your hand 3 times a week and having you just come in just to have us watch you do your exercises. That way we can focus on whatever we need to focus on during the session.
Yeah.
You do what you need to do when you get home, and then it just is a smooth progression week to week.
For sure. And I think being transparent as a patient. So just a tip for as your patient, if you know you're not going to be compliant, I would be very vocal about that of like, hey, I'm not going to do this at home, because I promise you we can definitely make the time to watch you do it. But I'm with Sarah is that if you're going to be paying a higher price for our service, typically you don't want to be paying, $175 to come in and have somebody just watch you exercise the whole time.
The same things you're doing at home.
Right. And if you're doing them, exactly. And so if you are doing it at home, like Sarah said, I mean, it might take me 45 minutes to do a thorough dry needle session that I feel like hits everything that I want to hit, that I'm not rushing putting the needles in, taking them out, making sure you're relaxed, things like that. And then if we're doing, some specific exercise and then some other manual, then boom, you're like, all of a sudden it's an hour or 75 minutes. And so if you're compliant, that helps immensely, especially if you're someone who likes the hands-on. Now, obviously, there's some people who don't like those things. They're like, I need to know that when I'm at the gym, I'm doing all these things right. So please watch me.
Yeah.
And that's where a dialogue like we're talking about comes in handy, because you can get to know your patient and get to know what's going on. But I usually ask people in the eval, like, being fully honest, do you see yourself being able to carve out 10, 15, 20 minutes a day to do what we're going to ask you to do? Because if the answer is no, I'm going to make you a little heavier on the exercise in person with me.
Right. Yep.
Maybe I might suggest 2 times a week, but the vast majority of people that find our practice they tend to be proactive. They tend to be already doing something, and they want the education. They want the guidance. And, it is a doctorate level now. So we have 8+ years behind our education. And so it takes time to relay some of that information to you that we find is helpful. So I just think it's cool, because I typically also see people 1 time a week, except for obviously surgeries. So like we have a couple knee replacements coming up on the schedule, and those we'll probably see 3 times a week on the front end. And that's more just because pain management, range of motion, things like that. If you're coming in and you're like, my back flares once a year, depending on, it's just different. And I think it's totally my preference to not have this pressure in the back of my mind of like, oh gosh, I need to get this person in on the standard. Like if you see a standard physician script, I would dare say 90% of them are like 2 to 3 times a week for 4 to 6 weeks. And it's just like, they just write it out of habit. And, some of that is based on science. It takes 4 to 6 weeks for tissues to heal, things like that. It takes 8 to 10 weeks for strength to really kick in. But those are things that I like to talk about with my patient as well. Like, hey, you're probably going to hurt potentially for a few more weeks. So knowing that, here's how we can go about it to stretch your package out or to, make sure we're using your finances respectfully.
Yeah. And I know we both have patients who just want and need that accountability of twice a week or
forever,
so.
forever, which is we're cool with. So that's another kind of getting to the empowering patients for long-term success. We are different in this model because you don't have to need physical therapy to work with us. I mean, you don't have to technically have skilled care from a physical therapist. We do, hey, can you just make sure that I don't hurt in the future? And can you work with me for literally ever? Like we have a couple older patients and, they're financially very secure and they've saved to the point where they're like, yep, what I want is to not end up in a wheelchair later. And what I would like is to have you strengthen me twice a week. So it's not that it's personal training. It's not that it's not PT, but it's utilizing all of our knowledge base to just get them a specific outcome or a lack of pain. And I thoroughly enjoy that. So we almost always have a handful of people that are in that category where they're just ongoing patients and they love it. They love that if something's flared up a little bit one day, hey, let's do some hands-on or let's work on strengthening. And that's been super fun in this setting.
Agreed.
Biggest thing that I think sets us apart as far as I'm just looking more on the long-term success is, like Sarah mentioned earlier, understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And so I think coming from a different world where I didn't have time to educate as much, it was just, hey, here's the exercises that I know are going to be good for you. Just do them. Like, just trust me and just do them. And some people would do them and they get better and they would trust it and they're like, great, but they really don't know why they did it. And so I think a huge part in long-term success is making sure somebody understands in a nutshell. And you have some people that they don't really want to learn about it. They're like, listen, just tell me what to do. I'll do it. And then I have others that are like, show me on an app, show me all the anatomy. I want to know. But that to me has been huge in this process because by the time the patient is done working with us, my hope is let's say we give them strengthening for the outside of their hip. If they don't know why we're doing that, then they're going to do it till they feel better. And then they're probably going to stop doing that. But if they understand, hey, this helps balance out the pelvis, which helps stabilize the back, which helps, the whole chain, they tend, and then what I like, and then I'll unpack it on your side, is it opens up the door for conversation even with like either their trainer or if they're strength training on their own. It doesn't have to be one exercise forever. It's like, hey, you have a whole smorgasbord of exercises on YouTube or on whatever that if you type in lateral hip strengthening and if it matches more with your style of exercise, like cool, take your pick, do whatever you want as long as you understand that the goal is to strengthen the side of the hip. And I think that's more fun in this setting of you can see it click of like, oh, I don't have to do clamshells. Like I don't have to do these standard PT exercises, but as long as they understand the body part and what you're trying to strengthen and why, then it opens the door for their own freedom of exercise choice.
Yes, I totally agree. One of my favorite things, I can think of several people right off the top of my head that it's like, you just love to hear it. You feel like you've done your job well of educating and helping them understand what needs to happen in their bodies. When somebody comes back, like I've had somebody come back after trying out a new gym and they'll say, oh, well, they didn't have this type of machine or that, whatever. And so I just did this instead. Is that okay? And I get so excited about that. I'm like, yes, that's perfect. Like this shows.
You get it.
Yes, exactly. Like, this, you know what you need to do. You're independent, you can take the reins here,
Exactly.
And also just like being able to kind of expand upon that too and say, if I've got a goal for somebody for by the time I come back next week, let's try to go from, we'll try to go from exercise A to exercise B next week. So in this week, we're going to just work on maybe increasing your reps or increasing the weight or whatever. And then I come back the next week and they're like, well, I was feeling really good. So I went ahead and I added weight for a couple of days. And then, that was going well. So then I just went ahead and tried that next exercise, or like I tried, even if I didn't specify a particular next exercise, maybe they've tried something that's just a little bit harder, but similar, and I love it. I'm like, yes, you get it.
Yes, absolutely. Especially in this day and age, depending on the age of the patient, there is so much information on the internet. And I'm not one of the people that dogs that. I'm like, there are brilliant people online. I mean, if you find somebody that you jive with on YouTube and you like their exercises, awesome.
Yeah.
Like that's great because this is not, it's not rocket science. Like there's not one exercise that fixes things, even though, like I feel like it's a trend right now. The reels are like, you've discovered this one exercise and now all your knee pain goes away. It's like,
that's what gets the clicks.
That gets the clicks. Exactly. So if you've gone through PT with someone like us and you understand what you're looking for, like, the sensation you're feeling of like, oh, when I engage this muscle, it feels like that. Then if you want to like search the internet for your favorite flavor of exercise, cool. Like that works as long as you know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I've enjoyed that. I have enjoyed it a lot.
I have found myself saying many times to many people that, like, say, for example, someone's got a stiff knee and we're trying to get a little bit more, the last bit of extension, full knee straightening out of that knee. And, I'll show them a couple different ways to stretch it out and mobilize it. And I often find myself saying, you can even Google something. I don't care what you like. I don't care how you do it, as long as you're feeling feeling a pull here or feeling a stretch here. As long as you're feeling it the way you're feeling it right here, right now.
Yes, exactly.
You can do it in whatever position you want,
I feel like we're the opposite of the coffee mug that you see go around on the internet where it's like, don't, mistake your Google search for my medical degree. I feel like we're the opposite where it's like, you've lived your life in your body and you feel it all the time. So if we can just educate you on what to do, like I'm not going to try to mistake my, 8 years of getting a doctorate for your lifetime in your body. So we try to take the opposite side and be on team patient. Like I'm not trying to sit here and act like I know everything about you.
Right.
I'm trying to get to know your body so that you can get to know your body better because you're the one that lives in it and you're the one that has to go through the day to day. So, and if you feel more comfortable because you've Google searched and found something that works, like awesome, show it to me and I'll tell you if I think it's good for you or not. And then,
and sometimes that can speed up the process of like, if it's an eval and this person comes in and they've already done a lot of research and they've tried certain things and they know what has not helped and they know what has helped, you may want to like review them and make sure that they've been done correctly or whatever. But knowing, right off the bat, certain things that help and don't help can tell us a lot, right? In that first subjective of the evaluation that first day.
Absolutely. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left. We're going to try to keep these around the 30-minute mark. But the last thing I wanted to hit on in here was the concierge style of this. So the other thing that makes us different, and I'm just curious like how you've liked it, is the mobile component. So taking out I don't want to call it an excuse, it's just reality. Like as I'm a mom now and Sarah's a mom of almost 2, schedule is a huge deal. And so we have, used to be more like 80%. I mean, now I think we're a little bit more in the 50-50, but coming to your home, coming to your workplace, ignore the dog in the background if you can hear that. But just truly taking out I don't have time to sit in traffic. I don't have time to sit in a waiting room. I don't have time to do these things, but I want your services. That is something that we really do highlight is our goal is to be flexible for you so that you don't have to be so flexible that you neglect your body. Like if it boils down to you would do it if someone showed up where you are, boom, here's an hour. And then we just, we take up our stuff and we go. That has been a huge component in HiFLEX in general. It's how I started is only mobile. But how has that experience been for you?
Yeah, the flexibility piece is huge. I know for myself as a person, if I were the patient, like I would love having that flexibility. I utilized that myself, especially when I was a brand new mom those first few months of you can barely get out of the house, so I did that personally, utilized a lot of different mobile services. And so I get it. And yeah, just depending what season of life you're in, like people are busy, like we have a lot going on. And so just being able, like you said, to carve out time to actually take care of yourself. It's a lot easier to carve out an hour in your own home than it is to carve out 2 hours with traffic time, drive time and whatever to go to the office or whatever. Find a babysitter if you need a babysitter, there's a lot of pieces that can go into that. Or take off work potentially if you had to. Like we can take away a lot of the distractions and take away a lot of the constraints that would help you get better. And like you said, help you be able to focus on your body, focus on like you need to do what you need to do to get better.
Definitely.
And then the other part of that too, I think, is we're most comfortable in our own surroundings. And so people will be, I think, more open with what's going on, and they're just more comfortable. They may just kind of click with you a little bit faster as far as like feeling comfortable enough to share some things that possibly they wouldn't feel super comfortable sharing right off the bat in a clinic setting,
Agreed. Or even sometimes if a spouse is home and they're like, can my husband sit and watch?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, sure,
Please
definitely.
do.
Yeah. I would happy to have you in here. Even having people's kids in there sometimes. I know it depends on the patient. Sometimes they want to be away from their kids, but sometimes just having them there is so much easier than finding childcare, and your kid understanding like, hey, mommy needs to work on this so that she can feel better and play with you is kind of cool. I've had one patient, they had 3 kids home at the time, and one was like, can I watch you work on him? Like, I want to be able to work on daddy later. And I'm like, sure, yeah. So it's been fun. It has been fun. Okay, well, we will wrap it up there. Thanks for coming and chatting.
Thank you.
Hopefully this was just at least a little eye-opening if you've been like, I don't know what it's like to work with them. We just want to start unpacking a little bit more, and we'll go through a whole bunch of different topics as the podcast progresses. But thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
I hope you guys have a great day, evening, night, morning, whatever time it is when you're listening to this, and we will talk to you later.
Bye.
Soon. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed it and learned something that you maybe didn't know before. Feel free to reach out directly to me, Chelsea at HiFLEXHealth.com, if you'd like to discuss any of these topics in greater detail, or follow our social media channels, or just look at our website, www.HiFLEXHealth.com. Stay learning, stay moving, stay healing, and as always, we hope that you will come back and learn more at another episode. Thanks.